Well, welcome everyone to our little panel about App Store, basically promoting the games and discovering the games the way basically the App Store won't put much focus on. Let's start with maybe let everyone introduce themselves, right? Jeff, maybe you can start on your side. Do you have a microphone?
1, 2. Oh. Hi, my name is Jeff Tremblay. I am Business Development Manager for Nutaku.
I'm Asmus Aloranta from Kavio Publishing, and my job is to help basically all the game companies in Northern Finland in funding and publishing games and marketing.
And I'm Anderson King, and I'm from the Huawei Mobile Services team, based here in Helsinki, and we're helping indie developers and large developers promote their games in an alternative app store.
All right. And my name is Martina, and I'm a mobile game publisher, and we specialize in hidden object games, time management, match 3 games. And the company's name is Tamalaki. All right, so we have a very nice, diverse panel here of app stores, publishers, and
apparently we're lovely, according to Oscar.
That too, right? I mean, we got that one. We got that going for us. The idea behind this panel was, the app stores and Google Play Store mainly, they've already been difficult to basically get discovered on from the start, and it's only getting more and more tough in the last couple of years. So it's basically about discovering and what other options mobile game developers have. So kind of it was fun getting you also on the panel, Anderson, because I also want to tap a little bit into China, because just how vastly different the App Store space looks there. Like it's just close to 100
no Google
App stores, right? It's basically a maze trying to navigate through. And in Southeast Asia and Latin America, you also see that mobile operators, for example, have their own store. Do you think that could the future of a fragmented App Store like that also be a reality in the West?
Yes, definitely. I think it's happening right now. There's many different options for developers to distribute their content. Obviously, the big players still dominate and will continue to dominate, but maybe we'll see a change in business models moving forward. Potentially like the other main content industry, music and TV and movies, you could see potentially people paying for exclusivity for content as well. So
isn't that already happening?
It is in China.
I think, I don't know, I can see a future where various verticals, I mean, right now the main stores are generalists. They host everything and anything, or they refuse everything and anything. No pun intended. But I think there's going to be a time when fragmentation will come through verticals, various game categories. So basically the user, the player, will have the option of going to, yes, a general store, but also to a very specialized store that calls upon his interests within the type of game genres and game categories that he plays. And I think that's one angle that the space should look into. Maybe the Huawei's of this world. Who knows?
Well, I can't really comment specifically on that, but we certainly are providing an alternative option to Google. I mean, we distribute, we have our own SDK to integrate as well. It's a way for developers to access our Huawei audience, and being a Chinese manufacturer, we have an app store in China, surprise, surprise, one of the 100 or many more than there are 100 in China. We can help Western developers into the Chinese market. We can't publish you there. You're probably aware of China is a very strict market when it comes to things like corruption. So from the very highest levels in the Chinese government, they're cracking down on corrupt activities, and people literally get sent to jail for doing corrupt things. So we can't be a publisher in China, because obviously if we publish content and put it on our store and promoted it, then that's obviously a way to make more money for ourselves. So that's why we have partners to help with things like that. But I think in the West, though, still for the time being, it's so expensive to set up a store and do all the necessary things around managing and operations of a store and hosting content and distributing it, that it'll be a while until you get a very big competitor to the main ones, I think.
The gap is just unsurmountable.
Yeah, but then that's why, sitting in Europe, it's actually quite encouraging, because you may have heard of all the fines. I think I took a note here. This year, July, 4.32 billion euros fine to Google from the EU. June 2017, 2.42 billion fine. And this is against antitrust practices for the operating system, essentially search and, what was the other one? Browser, sorry. So the only thing that's not covered in the latest fine is the App Store, the Google Play Store. So that's kind of in their targets as far as we can see. So there could well be a point where the EU makes it such that Android licensees who take the operating system can fork from Android and have their own App Store without having Google Play on the device. So I think that's a real reality that's coming up, and probably in the next 12, 24 months we'll have a bit more clarity on that.
Do you think manufacturers will create this new Google Store, so we'll have a store per manufacturer?
Likely.
That's a little scary. For developers, I mean, you guys are going to have to talk to every single manufacturer out there and work double time to get featured, to get listed.
So what happens in China, Jeff, is you engage with a company that generally gives you an SDK, and that SDK makes you able to address multiple stores. Yeah.
That does remind me a little bit of like the old Flash days. It's basically where I started my career, right? Where it was like thousands of websites, just all had their own little portfolio of Flash games, and one would be focused on dress-up games, the other on car games, and those kind of things. And yeah, I mean, if you wanted to basically hit every available channel, you had a lot of work to do. But back then, also distribution was pretty easy. You just gave them your Flash file, and that was it, right? And you didn't need to implement basically a different API for every store. So that's going to make it much more difficult on the mobile side of things. But you know, like that's basically also kind of from the store perspective. But I also want to talk a little bit about like how publishers catch sort of a niche in the audience. And you know, you just want to grab a microphone, right? I mean, also like with you guys' work as publishing games. How do you see that?
Of course, it's like impossible to. When you publish your game in Google Play and it's in the pile with the other 800,000 same genre games, it's like impossible to find there if you don't just put shitloads of money in UA, and it's impossible. So, but if in China otherwise there is a different kind of stores that people who wants to play that kind of games, they have that store installed in their phone. So that might almost solve a couple problems for developers.
Mm-hmm. As far as we're concerned, we kind of circumvented that. We created our own destination platform. So, I mean, our position in the market is we're an adult gaming platform. So we both publish and operate a platform.
Yeah, do you already have your own app store?
It's coming. It's coming on Android. It won't be on Apple. It will be on Android. Our client will be there. We'll facilitate player install. 57% of our current traffic is from mobile, so we're definitely keen on that. We're anxiously waiting for the release of that Nutaku store, if we want to call it that way, but it'll stay within the ecosystem of Nutaku, so it won't be open to external developers unless you're actually distributed on the platform or have a publishing relationship with us.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was so hard to install your games when I made the research about the adult games.
We're working on making it a lot simpler for the users. Well, there's a few hoops to jump, you know?
So, well, Nutaku does have that interesting angle where you guys do actually have experience in like setting up your own app store that basically for the Android market. So, I mean, was that like a massive thing, or was it just a few months of work? What did the company basically need to?
It's not just a few months of work. There's a lot of work involved. We've been talking about it and looking into it for months and months and months before we actually got into development. We're in the final stages of development. We're really excited about launching it this fall. But then again, it's just not simple. It's not simple. We started by putting together the web destination. with most of them browser games initially. Within 3.5 years that we've been there, the world has changed. We integrated downloadable games, we integrated mobile games. We had to go through hoops of the installs where we were. The adult content obviously is definitely blocked from the App Store, and still Google has a little, twists and turns, let's put it this way. So we had to find a solution to facilitate access to content. And when I was talking earlier about this vertical slice, this very niche vertical, we're totally into it, and we're addressing it left, right, and center.
Just an additional comment. You talk about years of development for your store in China for the Huawei App Gallery. It's a team of 400 people that handle that product in China. So that's the operation. It's the development of the actual store itself. It's partner management for developer relationships, all that kind of stuff. So it's 400 people.
400 people. Wow. Well, hey, Nutaku, thumbs up. We did it for less than that.
Right. If everyone's looking for a big project to take on, set up an app store, apparently. And it's also news also that last month, of course, Epic bringing out Fortnite outside of the App Store. What's your guys' take on that?
Maybe as a publisher.
It's just greed. They just wanted more money, but there was some security trust issues in their own store, right?
I think it was mainly the 30% thing.
Because of that, they made their own app store. But I have to say that when I install your games or your app store and
thank you for admitting it in front of everyone. Really appreciate that.
When my phone asks that, hey, Nutaku wants to access in your Facebook and in your data and in your photos and camera and everything, so I thought twice. First I put a no cancel, and then shit, I have to do this, and
I have to go through
now you have access to all of my data, and that
we know you now.
But that's a little bit scared, of course. That okay, I'm giving all my information to this adult.
And you know what? Thanks for pointing it out. We'll definitely make a point to bring it back to the engineering team. I mean, there are some level of access permissions that we don't necessarily need. So thanks for pointing that out. We'll definitely take a note.
I think Fortnite's a very special case. There's not many other pieces of content today that could have done what they did with the releasing it outside of the Android Google Play Store. But still, I mean, I think I read something last week, 15 million installs in 21 days or something like that. It's crazy, yeah. But I mean, if you do the math,
less? Did you expect anything less? I mean,
not really. No.
Look at the poll this game is having. I mean, it's crazy. It's
got the most views on YouTube. It's just a phenomenon right now, absolutely. But yeah, you do the math that they've saved 30% off every in-game purchase, so it was worth a fair bit of money to Epic to do that.
As long as it doesn't take 400 people to do it.
But what you see, the interesting thing though is the. Okay, I'm uninstalling Nutaku, Jeff. Screw you. No, I'm kidding.
I love you. You love me.
The interesting thing though is that it took a lot of effort from Epic. You know, if you did try and install Fortnite on an Android device, there was a long list of what was whitelisted, and because of the fragmentation of Android, it's required a lot of effort. But they made enough money to justify that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It's basically a numbers game, right? They knew that they had the audience, and they could definitely.
At that point, it's not even a money game.
But there's only like a
handful
of developers who can.
But then maybe I don't know if Rose is still here. Maybe she has a comment on King's business practices. But maybe it makes sense for somebody like King to set up their own store. You know, like they have put a lot of traffic through Google Play, obviously.
Back to our earlier point, are we now going to see a store per publisher or per large developer, the Supercells of this world, and so on? That's another conundrum.
Yeah.
Earlier today, there was also a whole track about cloud gaming, and how do we think that's going to influence the distribution of apps?
Who knows?
You have such inspiring answers.
I'm using Hatch. It works fine, and I like to use that, but I think that it will be even more successful in the future when all the 5G and 6G networks are working, and everything can be in the cloud. You don't need your own like phone power.
Yeah, I was going to say, basically, the cloud computing power combined with no more latency or super high-speed wireless connectivity will actually enable developers to work in a different way and not rely on the device's computing power, but be able to feed directly into the phone, making it a different experience.
I think as well that perhaps the devices will become more graphically powerful because that's what you want to render like on right in the front of your face.
Well, the S7 was the first one with its own dedicated GPU.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's going to be a bit more of a trend, obviously. So yeah, and as you can see, there's a lot more handheld gaming devices. Nintendo's had a huge boost with the Switch, and
Massive.
Yeah, so that's just down to the chipsets becoming much more powerful.
Look in the last 3 years, these phones are now becoming game consoles. They have more power. I have more power on this phone than we have on PSP and Vita in the days.
Yeah, we're entering the point where actually PvP from mobile phone to PC is going to be fair, right?
Yes, it works, yeah. Yes. And that's also where another angle where cloud computing is coming in as a support.
I mean, it's huge for that, absolutely. I mean, AWS is doing so much business. I mean, they're building data centers for AWS faster than Amazon can build headquarters, which is quite fast.
And they actually now have GameSpark and GameLift, and they have dedicated services destined at developers and facilitating the cloud, the usage of the cloud infrastructure that they offer.
Mm-hmm. There's also kind of when you think of companies setting up app stores, of course, first you think of like mobile operators and such. But nowadays we also see, for example, Discord offering games, and companies like WeChat or Facebook through Messenger or something, they're offering HTML5 games. So through all these various channels, where do you guys expect to see most growth and success?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Twitch and it's great for discovery. Like the biggest problem we have with the stores today is they're so overcrowded and it's so hard to. I mean, they're really just there for search, especially the Google Play Store. So if you don't know what you're going to search for, then how do you discover something that you might like?
That you might like.
So yeah, so consequently, this is why I believe that Twitch and other competitors,
Twitch and the Discords are used as marketing channels at this point.
Correct, and also kind of teaching channels as well. I know my 11-year-old son likes to watch Twitch to learn how to do things in games.
Within the game.
Yeah. So I think that it's going to serve a purpose for that, but Twitch is owned by Amazon. There's clearly Amazon has an app store. There's clearly integrations in the roadmap for the future. So it's going to be the ease of user experience, the ease of people being able to consume content, to install games is what it's going to come down to. So if you can make that journey from a user, from having an idea of let's have a bit of a fun and a bit of a casual game session, from watching a video of a cool new game to actually installing it and playing and monetizing in the near future, then I think that's probably what we'll see more of.
Mm-hmm.
I think manufacturers are in a great position to take ownership. I mean, you're the first point of contact. I mean, there's no friction between you and the Huawei or
that's why still today, whenever I meet partners, developer partners, they always want to find out about pre-installation because that's it's on the software, on the device, out of the box. There it is, ready to.
Some companies have built business models around it for 10, 12 years.
Many
Wild Tangent in Seattle has been doing this on PC, especially, but for over 13 years.
And the big mover in mobile was IronSource. They kind of took that pre-installation model and put it on its head, and have done great business since then. And they're in a lot of different manufacturers' out-of-box experience, the onboarding flow. So I think you'll see more competitors in that space too.
Osmo, when you are working on like a new game project, do you also kind of take the distribution in consideration? Like, besides the usual suspects like Apple and Google, do you also already plan ahead for a certain game to go on other platforms?
It's like always like first Apple, then Google, and then figure out that is it game successful enough to put your effort and money to spread it in the other platforms. So it just have to. Apple and Google are so big that if
they're unavoidable. Yeah. But every developer out there thinking of getting a game distributed needs to look at alternative distribution channels because they're just not going to make it on those two overcrowded, saturated, undiscoverable game stores. Period.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Yeah, there is money in all the stores, so don't let the money stay there.
Exactly.
Yeah, true. And I basically have a very similar approach, with our hidden object games. Yeah, I mean, for a long time we saw that Apple and Google were like, okay, we're running with that.
First 2 years.
Basically, right? And it is becoming harder, and definitely more distribution and different territories, different stores.
And try to get featured.
More of the mix.
Try to get featured.
Yeah. Well,
as an indie developer, try to get featured. You're 1 in a billion. Literally 1 in a billion chances of getting featured out there.
Not on Huawei.
All right. I also do want to open the floor a little bit to questions from the audience. Not sure if there's... Raise your hand, let's say.
We don't talk about HTML5 topic.
Oh, you want to talk about HTML5?
Yeah.
Oh, you're like, I've been waiting for that question.
I've got a good answer.
All right. Yeah, that's true. I did also. Well, let's first take Vlad's question because he's got his hand up.
Thanks. This is kind of an expertise question based on what you guys think might be happening. So a little bit of crystal ball asking there. But most recently, we've seen a lot of developers explore the Nintendo Switch. So when you released before, I would say, September last year, you were one of the first 100 games. In December, it was first to 500. Right now, I think we're passing like the 2,000 mark of games on Switch. So I know that Nutaku has 170 games at the moment because, well, I work for you guys. But it's going to be an interesting development, I think, for Huawei as well. Now that you're, out here showing what's happening, what are your predictions? And feel free to pick it up, whoever wants to, from the panel. But what are your predictions how developers need to adjust once they tap into the opportunity of a new market or new app store? And how do we then adjust as developers to that that app store going from 100 to 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to the billions that Jeff also mentioned? What kind of mentality should developers have?
Is the mentality shift need to happen at the developer side? Developers need to focus on one thing: is make the best game they can, right? I think that responsibility of curating or organizing content relies on the store operator, not the developer. The developer is challenged enough with what is out there. If you start changing the rules and putting the burden on developers, I mean, you guys are just going to die. It's as simple as that. So that responsibility, I think, lies with the stores. We've seen evolution in the Google Play or Apple throughout the years. Those rules have changed. And I think any store that will open will have a set of three, what do they call it? The three...
pillars?
The 3 pillars. And then the rule sets will evolve.
But I remember the day that I discovered a few years ago now that editor's choice in Google Play was an algorithm. And I was like, oh, I thought it would be a real person.
There's no editor.
Yeah, exactly. So I understand what you're saying, and that's kind of like, how do we not turn into Google Play and not be discoverable again? I echo Jeff's comments that it's about the developers making the best games. It's also about having relationships with the stores as well. It can be very difficult, but get in early is a good tip while the stores are still growing, and develop a business relationship with those stores and make sure that you're responsive to their requests. Obviously, everybody has different requirements to address a store, but we try and make those things as easy as possible, and make those the support function, I think, is another key factor too. So one of the big moves for Huawei this year is to really develop our developer support. All the technical information that's available on the websites, things like that, needs to be really top notch to help developers and give them the opportunity to monetize on our different stores.
As easily as possible.
As easy as possible, yeah.
Yeah, it is a good point though, because I was thinking, this conference we always like broadcast the message like, no, you should put your games on every platform. Like, well, what if every developer does that? Then we're just like copying the problem, right? But it's I guess like we said before, for like the most development teams, it's pretty much impossible to try to literally get on every store anyway, because it's just too much work.
Yeah, and if you want to do an update and you have it on, 10 different SKUs with different SDKs and that kind of stuff, then
that'd be hell.
It's
update nightmare.
Update nightmare, yeah, and like nobody wants.
Maybe that's where the cloud can help too.
Probably.
As a client versus.
If the stores allow it, right?
If the stores allow it.
Yeah.
Find a way.
Well, you did have a very good point that I skipped the question about HTML5, so let's circle back to that. So because I promised, 10 years ago I was at a company where back then they were already saying that HTML5 is the absolute future. Let's fully like move our content strategy there, and well, that didn't move. And I like literally now today, 10 years later, I still don't really have the feeling that we're there. Even though for messenger platforms it's now like taken off, and there's some companies who have HTML5 content that's like they're doing really well. But do we think that HTML5 reality is really going to happen?
From my perspective, I don't know. When you say companies doing really well in HTML5, I think they're surviving. I think that they, especially when it comes to Facebook Messenger gaming, they were promised a lot and didn't quite deliver as they had hoped. I think people that got onto that platform, the ones that are making money on that, are actually the early adopters. And if you're a bit late to that platform, which kind of sucks because it hasn't been around that long, so how do you be late? So it kind of penalizes them a little bit because they don't have the user base, and therefore the algorithm doesn't surface it to other people to discover the content. Where I do think HTML5 has got a big future though is in the other screens. So not your personal, highly powered, expensive device in your pocket or in your hand or in front of your face most of the time. It's in things like cereal packets that are going to have flexible screens that are powered by cellulose batteries and things like that. So there'll be use cases for very light games that don't need to be installed, that can be accessed across the board in many different formats, many different places. Could be a bus stop, could be in a bathroom on above a urinal or something like that. You'll find that there will be it's probably a bad example, sorry. At least you've had lunch. But you'll find there'll be lots of new spaces where screens exist that people will be able to consume content on, and I think that that's where HTML5 is going to really start to sing.
We're exploiting HTML5 to actually be able to have people play our games on iOS devices. But we don't.
So do you wrap it up like it's an app?
No, it's a web browser.
Oh, it's a browser.
It's a browser game,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that way I guess you don't get any issues with it.
Circumvent the censorship.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a web page.
What do you think of HTML5, Asmo?
I just missed Flash games. It was. But when was the last time you played HTML5 game?
I mean, it might have been.
When did HTML5 launch? That's pretty much it.
I think that answered to your question.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we might, to be honest, we might be playing HTML5 games but not know it, right? Because they do get wrapped up as an app.
Yeah.
Sure. Are there any other questions from the audience also? I mean, we're good on time, so if anyone chipping in, otherwise I'd be happily continuing here. It's all fine. Or not. Wait, I lost it.
You have the empty paper in front of you.
I know, right? It's like
the white paper syndrome.
I'm sure I have more, but no, it's all right. So when we look at like sort of more like the specialized stores, right? So do we think? Well, I mean, Jeff, for you, this answer is going to be pretty clear. But besides sort of an adult store, what other sort of niches do we really think can take off?
I'd really like to have a kids store. You have the adult store. I have 2 and 4 year old girls, and they both have the phones and tablets, and they both have the Google Play. So all the devices are full of shit. so I don't even mean that they are full of games that I don't like, but they are just full of games that just are like a pop-up ads all the time. Their only purpose is to just show the ads to the kids, or trying to get the kids to find my credit card and put money there. It's like totally crap. There's no like any gatekeeper in the kids section.
How about kids stores like Kiddos or something? You use that?
I have trying to find a like website which are like showing all the like good games, but same problem in every store and page.
Yeah.
I think also
they just want to make money. They don't want to have good games for the kids.
brand companies, look what Disney's doing right now. It withdrawn all its content from Netflix and is launching its own Netflix. It also has a truckload of interactive entertainment available out there. So I think those are the first suspects that would capitalize on the power of the brand to say, okay, you want to watch a Disney movie? Download Disney Tune, whatever it is, and you want to play our games? Download our Disney Play Store. And Warner Brothers can do the same, and there's a bunch of other ones that can do the same. A lot of game companies can actually think about doing that too. Yeah, right. A handful at this point, but still.
What about esports? I think that would be a great, specialized category for a store.
True, and it's pulling like crazy. Hey, we got a few business models here for those who are listening.
Right, exactly. Just keep them pumping out, right? All right.
Easy and cheap. Yeah. Ask Huawei.
All right. There's another question I see, but is there? We need to wait.
Maybe you can just shout it out, Vlad. Sorry.
On the topic of niche audiences, I feel like there's definitely something I left there to discuss with this awesome panel. Huawei, of course. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys are focusing specifically on like certain niches in terms of
not right now, no.
audience. Not right now.
We're just acquiring as much as we can into the store.
Yeah, exactly. Just like wrapping those tentacles around the globe.
Our store only launched in Europe in June, and it's basically filled of Chinese developers' content that's localized for Western audiences. So there's not a lot of recognizable stuff in there. So it's our mission purely to bring in Western developers into our environment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's a question I had for the rest of the panelists as well. It's like what advice do you guys have for the developers next to me and behind me in terms of dealing with niche audiences? Because even like, the conversation me and Jeff have a lot with developers right now is the fact that there is a huge opportunity for more female-friendly titles on Nutaku, gay-friendly titles, LGBTQ-friendly titles. But what are your personal opinions on how developers can best leverage niches inside of these kind of new apps?
Know your audience. I mean, you'd expect if you're making a game for a particular audience, you maybe have a passion in that field or experience at least. So know your audience well and know what triggers get them worked up. Not to use the Nutaku example, but it's simplistic, but it's true. I mean, understand how the players interact with your games and know what kind of things that attract them to the game. So, and use that in your marketing material. I mean, you talk about discoverability. Everything looks the same. Or if you look on the Google Play Store, most of the app icons
Scary.
look the same. Yeah.
Look at the top 10 Google Store titles. They're all match 3s. How do you circumvent that? You got a great idea to come up with the next generation of match 3 game, where the top positions are already overcrowded, and given the editor is now an algorithm, excuse me, but you're fucked.
Well, I have to say, for niche audience, there's also often niche publishers. So, for example, in like my own company, where we really specialize in hidden object titles. I mean, I often get developers of a hidden object title that's already released, but they can't get an audience, and they turn to me like, well, we need help on that. And with basically running Tamalaki for more than 5 years, we kind of built up that audience and that reputation and all that, and kind of easier to find than just like one developer out there with their title. So I guess when you just look at the existing stores and all that, just like maybe in the help of a niche publisher and sort of bundle your strength, basically. All right. I think we are getting close to time. Oscar, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, one of the reasons why I haven't done a lot of off App Store, different App Store releases is because of the focus I've often had with rewarded video kind of style monetization, because I integrate that so deeply into a lot of the designs that I work on. But that means that when I put them on, if I wanted to put them onto other stores, those ads redirect you to the main stores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good
How
point.
do you circumvent that? How do you deal with that? Can you deal with that?
Well, in the Huawei case, we have a ad network whitelist. So we would, if you, for example, were going to publish on our store, then we would work out if your ad network is going to work or not.
But do you have systems in place on that store that do rewarded video, for example?
Yes.
Okay, because historically the main players haven't, and they haven't done it, and the ones that have done similar things haven't been able to do it at scale. And I imagine that's a big issue for a lot of people.
Mm. An interesting anecdote about that. I just heard from another developer that the update on his game on iOS was rejected because his ad network was accidentally showing an ad that had both the Google Play and the App Store download buttons. So the game wasn't even rejected because of his own content, but because of a mistake in the ad network. So I guess, yeah, that is a kind of a really interesting thing for new app stores, right? How to handle that. So you said that you work with basically a whitelist. Is that, as far as you know, sort of the usual thing, how other app stores handle it as well? I have no idea about this.
I believe so. I haven't worked for Apple or Google, so I can't really comment on their behalf. But I would imagine that there's systems in place that make sure, like you said, it was an automated thing for your friend with the Apple store that got blocked. So, yeah, those systems are in place, and you need to be very careful that you don't end up losing out because of some mistake that your third-party ad network has done. I guess at the end of the day, it just comes down to taking a lot of care over your product. Make sure you've got good product teams and good product managers that are on top of all this stuff, because there's lots of traps, I guess you could say, that you can fall into that can mean that your really great monetizing game is suddenly no longer available to people to install. So yeah, it's very important. And I think, if you can have a relationship with the stores, do it. Try and find the people from the Google Play Store and from iOS App Store. They do attend conferences. They're hard to get your hands on them, that's for sure. But try your best. Often they're speaking. If you see them speaking at an event, like take a note of what they look like. Try and find them in the corridor and have a word to them. It's simple things of just a face-to-face relationship can make a big difference. So I would encourage you all to do that and have pride in your products as well. Believe in them, stand behind them, and present them confidently. Unlike myself.
True.
All right, about time to wrap it up. You guys have any closing remarks?
Yeah, just call a publisher, and you, as a developer, you can concentrate on making the great games, and publisher makes all the other stuff.
That is a good.
True, and
that is actually a very good tip.
Second that.
And I do believe that should be the fundamental role of the publisher. So, yeah.
All right, lovely. Well, thank you so much, guys, for these valuable insights.
Thanks, Martina.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, guys.